Hey everybody, welcome to Schwab Coaching. My name is Mike Fairborn. Great to have you back for our Think Scripting class. It's been a crazy week in the markets, a lot of changes in the markets, a lot of big moves to the downside actually. Today I want to take a look at maybe some technical bottoms that do tend to form after extended declines and actually after sharp declines as well. So I want to talk about that, set it up, create some code for that. And yeah, we'll talk about that in more detail, but really it revolves around prices. So we'll dive into that today. A lot of times you get the first move coming from the price as opposed to the indicators. So tuning into prices today. I'd like to welcome everybody here today. We've got Chuck, John, Ray, Scott, Ocean Life. Good to have you on board, as well as Lakshmi, folks. Any questions, comments you have, definitely throw those in the chat. I'm joined in the chat by a good friend and colleague of mine, Barb Armstrong. You're probably very familiar with Barb. And yeah, many questions you have, let us know about those. You can follow Barb and I on X. You can follow Barb Armstrong CS, and mine is Mike Fairborn CS. So with that, let's dive into some disclosures so we can really get started, talking about this in a little bit more detail. So first off, folks, options carry a high level of risk. They're not suitable for all investors. Now, information here is for general information purposes only. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as a sole means of investment research. The paper money software application is for educational purposes only. Backtesting results are hypothetical. There's no guarantee that the same strategy implemented today would produce similar results. Now, investing does involve risk, including the loss of principal, and past performance of any security strategy does not guarantee future results. Now, with that, I wanted to just dive in and point out a couple of details here. If you are new to Think Scripting, well, we do try to utilize codes, Think Scripting codes specifically to find different scenarios in the market that might match different market conditions. A lot of times we're looking at specific stocks. Sometimes we will look at indices as well, whatever the case might be, to find that. And these are some of the steps you might want to just keep in mind. Today we're going to be able to still use and tap into a simplified approach using the condition wizard to locate. Actually, it's a fairly sort of complex setup, but the condition wizard does help us with that. So that's always nice. It's very applicable and it's easy, especially if you're getting started with scripting. But just to keep this in mind, these are some of the steps that we do like to go through because we think it does help to keep you in check with what we're trying to do. These are the steps, though. We always want to identify the goal initially up front. What does that goal represent? Is it doable? Can Think Scripting meet the goal? And one quick note is anytime you're in the condition wizard, if it's in there, you can pretty much meet the goal, creating that coding. But additionally, we say outline. We can apply the steps. This is what the big three I refer to: outline it, apply it, and then write it down. The Think Scripting tools, that is, write it down, then we can go through the testing process here. We're actually going to go through that a little bit today, but really as it came to identifying today's goal, it was, okay, markets are dipping, a number of stocks within those indices are dipping. How can we kind of track down, and what are some of the bigger technical sort of pricing patterns or indications that we get on a really short scale that can amount to reversal points? Now, sometimes that's to the upside, or it could just be down. When prices are coming down and we get like technical indications, it doesn't mean that it's going to automatically reverse, but sometimes they do reverse. In fact, a reversal in the minds of some traders is just basically a sideways move. And in other words, it doesn't continue to decline lower. And we're today going to be looking at technical indications for that spot right there that have oftentimes and historically will come up near bottoms. And so it'll kind of keep our eyes glued to that if we do start to see some reversals out there in the market. Okay, with that, super quick, just to look at the markets. I know you've been looking at the markets all day, probably all week, and you can see what we've got over here. Just one quick thing I'll note, because I do teach a class on swing trading. We've been talking about this, but if we just draw some lines in here, this does look a lot to me like we might be getting close to, and it's possibly where we stop today in the market for a full extension of a bear flag pattern, perhaps. Don't know if you've seen that yet. Many of you might have. In fact, if I flip it upside down, there you go. Notice, can you kind of see the bull flag? It's not a bull flag, but you can sort of see it, right? The upward move in terms of the pull of the flag. It's just easier for our eyes to adjust sometimes, but that is the move up right there. And I think it's actually quite close. I've got 30 more seconds. I'm going to allot myself to look at this because I want to spend the majority of our time looking at our key topic today. But if I come down here into my little drawing tool off to the right, this is the Fibonacci extension. If I click on this, whether we're doing it up or down, it wouldn't really matter. I click at the bottom one time, I click again. It gives me my 100% comparables, and there you go. We're actually exceeding it by about that much, the price target. But I will say this, that there are some levels over here that we have to wait and see what does happen. There was a prior high very close to that 100%, and another one over here at near the 123 retracement, or in other words, 123% of that move. I'm going to just take that minus sign out and see if it does the Fibonacci correctly for me too. No, it just takes it away. Okay, very good. That'd be cool if it flipped it and we could kind of see it, but you can do the same thing with the Fibonacci over here. Okay, well, that's what we've got there. Welcome to you, John. Name, Troy, Will, Bo, Chuck, Wayne, Scott, and others. Yeah, we're just talking today about, the market condition. It was tied into our Think Scripting goals. We want to see if there are some indications that the market could be ready to reverse at some of these levels, maybe not. But what stocks are showing signs of that reversal right now? And a lot of times if that's the case, they might be the first out of the gate to pop to the upside. Another quick note on this, anytime you want to just look at a shorter term chart, I'm going to go to a 5-minute chart here. Notice what happened. The biggest portion of the move happened in the first, well, what do we say? The first several minutes of the day, 15 minutes or so of the market day. The rest of it was like this. I mean, it's still going down, but that right there really accounted for much of our movement. And that really did just happen in the first 15 minutes. In other words, we're kind of holding into this range right here. There could be a possibility of a flip in the trend or not, but that's going to be something we want to be looking at. So what I've been seeing a lot kind of online too are these engulfing patterns. And it's interesting because engulfing patterns can happen first. And that means, and let's just pull one up that's happening right now so we can really kind of define what we're talking about in more detail. Oh, it looks like we didn't quite engulf. That's okay. I'm still going to look at it for now, but this is DLTR. It's actually holding at a support level. What we did see earlier, well, about 15 minutes ago, I think we sold off in the last little bit, and it could still be an engulfing pattern, but what we're really looking at, folks, is a bar that comes down, and this is going to be like a down bar, normally if we're looking at a bullish engulfing pattern. And then the next bar that comes after it engulfs that entire range, is what we're looking at. And this is actually quite interesting because it does signify a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And if you look at a number of these, you can spot that those engulfing patterns can occur at a lot of different bottoms. This one is very, very close to it, but you get a number of these. We actually had an engulfing, it looks like right there before the move occurred. You notice that the prior bar fits inside the bigger bar right there. And now that is an engulfing pattern, and that's bullish engulfing. In other words, the current bar engulfs the prior bar. Now, one key thing to note is a lot of times you will see these at the bottom. It's not necessarily a good sign if you see, okay, I'm sorry, it can be a good sign still if you see them at the top of a move. Like say, for example, a trend's coming up here. Yeah, you might spot this pattern up here as well. And it could be kind of like a follow-through day that you'll get. Okay, but I want to talk about what's going on here with this bar, with this setup. It is a candlestick chart. It's a bullish engulfing pattern. If we think about this, what do you think is happening? I'm going to pull up. We've got a good example here. I'm just going to flip because it's been a volatile day, and I think we're still having one here, if I'm not mistaken, on Home Depot. Ooh, it's still close, but just slightly there, but you can see it. We opened lower, and now we're trading above the range of the prior day's range. In other words, the body of the candle. Home Depot's got it. Home Depot's got one down here. It's kind of towards the support level. But if we think about what's happening here, we do know that we've got a situation where we started lower and we ended higher. Now, if we think about what's going on behind the scenes, we have this candle here, okay? This one went up. So what does that mean if I were to draw this over here on a shorter, perhaps a shorter term time frame would kind of illustrate this? What do you think we've got? I'm going to draw just a little move down here. What's going on behind the scenes on maybe a smaller time frame, a different time frame? Any thoughts on that? Why would these account for big reversals, and why is it a pretty common, well, it's a pretty popular candlestick formation to look at? Any thoughts on that? What might be happening? Well, we might be getting a change in trend. Higher highs and higher lows. Notice over here, we're above the range. The trend is actually changing, but on a shorter term basis. Yes, and so in this class, what we do is we will pull up code here so you can spot this and do scan. In fact, we're going to be looking at that. I just wanted to clarify that in the questions, but this is for beginners today. Okay, this is kind of for beginners as well. But yeah, there are other topics we did. In fact, I'll point that out to you here in just a second. It's a good question, particularly as you're getting involved with ThinkScripting. But what are we seeing over here? Do you see the change in trend? That's what I'm going to go. I went all the way to a 5-minute chart. So this is a huge difference. Let me just draw the range, the prior day's range. A lot of what you're going to see, not actually overnight activity, but look where the range of the activity was yesterday. That's this bar right here. A lot of times it's smaller, it's condensed perhaps. And then over here is this bar. Okay, didn't mean to draw it as big, but it does jump above the highs here. Okay, it's the closing price of the day, which would have been right there. And you can see that we are trading above that level. But notice what we're getting over here. Folks, that is clearly a trend change. Higher highs and higher lows. And that's ultimately what's going on. What makes this pattern unique is that you're spotting a change of trend that may not have been there all the way back over here. One more, I'm going to show you on a little bit longer term time frame on this, and then we can dive into some of the coding behind it here and showing what's going on. But if I go back to my daily chart, I'm going to show you ROST, raw stores. Now, raw stores, do you see this over here? What are we seeing off the bottom? Pretty clear, right? I mean, we're getting that's, it looks similar actually to last chart. Last chart was a 5-minute chart. This is a daily chart, but these are higher highs and higher lows right there. There's your new high. There's your new low. That is a change of trend on a daily chart. But on a weekly chart, let's just flip over to one over here. I'm going to really zoom in on it. Can you guys see the engulfing pattern occurring? It's right there. So whether we're seeking on a daily chart or a weekly chart, there might be a shorter term time frame that represents a change of trend. And that's why a lot of these can be reversals. Look at this over here. I mean, you've got another one right there too. Body of the candle is greater than the prior body. It fits inside of it. If we were to go to a daily chart, we're going to be getting it's a higher point. So if it starts lower, it's going to be, higher highs and higher lows. In other words, we're getting that change of trend in there. Now, that's what we're really kind of seeking here, and that's what makes it unique. Any questions on that? But these can occur at different bottoms. Now, I was able to find these, and there's not too many in the S&P 500, but we're already starting to see some that are showing signs, and that could be those could be interesting places to look as well. Okay, now there was a question that came up. By the way, one thing you'll see over here too is that there are these gaps that occur in the chart. And a lot of times when you're getting an engulfing pattern, you might get a gap in the share price as well. Encourage you guys just to do this. Subscribe to our channel so you can pick up on our great content. Bottom right-hand corner of the screen. I'm just going to fast forward because we do have these, or move forward here. We have these playlists. I went into more detail for this particular class we've got a playlist over here in terms of using gaps to spot early entries, and I've discussed 3 different types of gaps that you'll find in here. If you want to check this out, this can help you find that as well. A lot of times you might get an engulfing pattern that might follow through into some gaps. Now, just to highlight a question that came into the chat as well, I'd say that there's just one more you could take a look at. That's these condition wizards. We did 3 condition wizards here that are going to get you started on the coding as well. So take a look at that. If you could do that, I think it'd be very, very helpful. Let me go ahead and just plug this link in as well for you, so you could take a look at that if you want, those of you that are here. But if you're viewing it in the recording, that is one way to check it out. Okay, so let's do this. What I want to do right now is I'm going to go into the Scan tab. And moving into the Scan tab here, we want to make sure that we're in Scan, and then we have to be in the Stock Hacker portion of it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clear out what I've got right now, but I'm going to show you how we can use candlesticks that are actually built in to the software. Now, they weren't there a while ago. They're there now, and we can tap into it. Remember, it's also very important. We want to determine where we want to scan in. I'm just scanning in the S&P 500 right here. So if you are new, this is a great way to get started. You can actually learn some code and some ideas with it to come along with it. But over here in the add filters where we need to go next. So I'm going to click on that. It is a study. So the rest of these are in place, but I want to set up a study right now. Okay, there is the default study that comes up. Not to fear, we're going to have to remove it, but we can do that very, very easily over here on the right-hand side. In fact, here is a little pen we can click on. I'm going to pull this up right now, and let's start making some adjustments to this. The coding is really done if we're doing coding over here in the ThinkScript editor. Now, that's for the more advanced, but we're going to be on the condition wizard today because we can simplify it, and it's actually creating a really cool code that's already built in to the software. So with that, first things first, we're going to click on delete. Now, once you're in the condition wizard, we just want to go into add condition right there. We're going to go up top. I'm going to go into study because it is a study. This is a study. What's interesting about this, it's a study, but it's actually 2 days of price action with whatever time frame. You can see up top, we're in a daily time frame. We can look for other time frames, but it's actually referred to as a study. Don't want to throw you off on that because it's actually just price action. It's 2 days of price action. So we're going to go with engulfing right now. And there it is. Just type in engulfing. Now, quick note, this is very important. It does default to bearish. Bullish is at the bottom. We can click on that right there. I keep the links and this additional information the same as I'm in here right now. We can look at this, but yeah, so the length, so there are different parameters that Thinkorswim uses. For example, if I click on length over here, the number of candles used to calculate the average body height. And so it's using a string of days, candles, to calculate, hey, what's the height of a body? I think 20 days is fine. Or what are we looking at? Basically a month's time frame here. Okay, and so these are just like elements that are used to define that price action. And I want to break that down in a little bit more detail for you. So in other words, it defines over the prior 20 days what some of these bar lengths look like. What are we looking at, generally speaking? So that's one thing that's going on. The next thing is there's a trend setup. It's also part of it right here. Click on the question mark. That does list. It just basically just says the number of candles preceding, the number of preceding candles to check if the trend exists. It's looking at 3. All we're really looking for is the last couple. I'm just going to keep it at that default. They've left it there for a reason, but we've got that in place. Now, what we're trying to do is we're not looking for a move to occur after this fact. We're actually just looking to confirm that this has occurred. The engulfing pattern, which is bullish, based on our input parameters, again, these are the defaults, it just happens. And that's going to be right there. That is true. So all we need to do is just state that it is true. Our action item is true. And how many bars back do we want to look at? I'm going to keep it just within 1 bar. In other words, that's looking at today's bar. It's going to be forming today. Okay, so I'm going to click on save right now. And that is the pattern. Now, if we type this out if I click on ThinkScript Editor, This could actually be utilized as a code just using some of the data that is in the platform itself. There are other ways to do it with prices opening and closing higher, but this is just so easy to do. So like a really brief and simple way to pull up a couple of days of data that are doing exactly what you want them to do. Now, the next thing is right over here in the right-hand corner. I'm going to click on Scan. Let's scan this out. And there we go. So I had a little bit more earlier on. You could see that that DLTR has pulled off. It might be interesting to see at the end of the day what pulls up as we go through this. But we've got a few in here that we can look at, right? And I wanted to take you through, as we've kind of explained it a little bit. Let's look at a few more examples as we go through this. Let's go over here and let's see, we looked at Home Depot. Let's look at Lowe's, kind of along the same lines in the same business. Now, that's a little bit more clear. It's also happening at support, as you can see right here. And it's listed right there. I mean, it's right at, yeah, at that level. There's the follow through. I have basically no doubt in my mind that if we pull this up right now and we look at this, we're actually going to be seeing a change in trend on a shorter term basis. So at support, we might be getting a trend change just on a more minute level. Here is our 5-day, 5-minute chart. Do we see it? Higher highs and higher lows. That's a trend change that we hadn't seen previously off the pullback. Okay, so we could be looking over here. Is it a breakout? You know, what other things could we be focused in on here? Well, we could be looking at, well, we could be tracking it. We could also be using like alert features. Do we continue to break above the current bar? Could be an interesting sign too. So if I just back this out, let's go to back to our, well, let's say 6 month is fine. But notice this high over here. If we start to extend higher, right through there, we're coming into another area that we've talked about in this class that's pretty interesting, and that's a little bit more of the confirmation, and that is, can we get another bar follow through? Because if we do, now we're getting that intraday higher high and higher low trend. And sometimes, you know, when we see this pattern, this might position us better to start taking out the daily resistance that we're seeing. That's why a lot of traders will focus in on this. And I don't have to go back too far. You can kind of just see where some of that resistance might be. But that's why they might be utilizing an engulfing pattern. Might be, you know, might get more indications that they're ready to reverse and go higher. Now, I realize this is a tricky class to talk about today in all our classes because we're looking at this massive pullback due to the uncertainty of the tariff situation. But hey, at least it kind of keeps you ahead of the curve a little bit and hey, what's forming out there. Now, a lot of times when these formations, as a matter of fact, you might see a formation on the market itself where it gets an engulfing pattern. You can just imagine when you pull up your scan up top here, you're going to be getting a lot more stocks that are showing engulfing patterns. And they could move with the market if the market itself decides to go higher. Let's hit a couple more of these. I mean, I recognize some of these names. So DHI, D.R. Horton. Nike's in there as well. So DHI, okay. Been slowing for quite some time. There it is. Pretty straightforward. Now, this company does have earnings that are coming up here. But if I just check it out, again, on a short-term basis, higher highs, higher lows, looks a lot like a potential bull flag pattern over here. Just it's on a much smaller scale. Now, when we see this on other scales, sure. You know, as we're looking at these examples, it's a great time to do it. Come down here, let's say a 10-day, 30-minute chart. Okay. You can't quite see the higher high and higher low, but you can see that you broke above and you're sort of flagging a little bit there. Where are you resting at? Well, pretty close. So that's what we might be looking at. Now, we did have to go to a shorter term time frame, but it's all there. Okay? And that is why some traders will look at these engulfing patterns. What was our next one? NKE. Okay, pretty big there. Pretty big bar. Look off the bottom. It looks like it's trading near the highs of the day. Nike. Um, Try to figure out how that stands in the tariff situation, though. I mean, it's a different kind of an area we have to kind of think through there. But there might be some negotiations done over the weekend. We have to just kind of wait and see. But there's quite a bit of strength right there, short term. What do you guys think? I think we'll see the trend. I think we'll see it. You might start to see some patterns in there too. This is sort of interesting because you're sort of already breaking above these highs right now on Nike. This is just for example purposes here, but say for example, you could just put a paper trade on and check it out as well and just see how it does unfold into the next day, realizing, you're not getting a lot of indications here just on a very short-term basis, but it could be a way to help you kind of sort of track it too by putting on a paper trade just to see what does unfold. But like I said, there can be other indications, but this is a key one to look at. All right. So with that, I've got one more bottom that is so similar to it. I'm going to use actually a chart over here of Apple to show this to you. This is referred to as a Harami pattern, and it just flips it around, but it also shows us something quite interesting that could be happening on the chart as well. So let's dive into that right now. I'm going to highlight some of these details. Look at this over here. Notice that this was like a major bottom. And this is a little bit different. This is the body of this candle, which is the current bar, fits inside the prior body. Now the Harami in Japanese, my understanding is it means pregnant woman. And it just means that it's just the opposite of what we were looking at previously, right? It's not the engulfing pattern where you saw the small bar and then the large bar after. It's just the opposite, okay? But these can also happen at the bottom, and these are really quite common to look at as well, but these are Harami patterns, or also referred to as inside days. Okay, right here. Don't have to look too far, but okay, let me zoom into this as well as an example. Right there. Oh, there it is. Another one. Is that the same one? Hang on. Let me back out. Yeah, it's right. I'm sorry, it's right there. Right here. Inside bar. Right at the very bottom. Okay. I want to talk about what this could mean, because we're kind of showing this here. What do you think's going on in this case? Let's break it down. And I go through these because I think it's important to kind of know behind the scenes. It gives us a little bit more confidence in these patterns, what we might be seeing. First one was a change in trend on a shorter term basis. What could this one mean? So we've got this bar here. Let me draw it a little bigger. Okay, so we've got this bar here, and then the next bar fits within it. What is going on there? Any thoughts on that? That's quite a dip, Barb, yeah. Year to date, that's down quite a bit. Let's look at it this way. If I have this move here and I've got this range, tell me if this looks familiar to you guys. What is that pattern right there? Triangle. Would that work with what we're talking about here? It just keeps developing into a range? In a lot of cases, yes. Indecision as well. Yeah, it could be it's sort of a tightening of a range, but the range is getting a little bit tighter and a little bit tighter there. And that's where sometimes after these sharper sell-offs, you might get a coiling of price. So a price compression is really what a Harami ultimately is. Okay? Or it's also a price compression. Or on the other side, it's a change in trend. So those are two key patterns that are used by traders, right? You get the a triangle pattern, which oftentimes is going to break out bigger, up or down. But you're going to be watching that for the possibility of an upward move, or simply a change in trend. But that's like what we're saying here. So one side, the Harami, the next side is the engulfing pattern. Okay. Let's go in and let's build up that code. And what we're going to do now, we're going to go back to our scan tab. We're going to actually add to this so it can scan for both of them. So I'm going to go back and click on my pencil. I'm going to go in here. We're going to add one more condition. And we're just going to go right into study. Type in Harami. Okay. Now, same holds true here. It does start with bearish, so you've got to click on bullish next. You got to put in bullish to tap into that. Here are the inputs that are used. I'm just going to use those defaults. But again, in fact, the one we didn't have is the body factor here. But the factor, if we read through this, the factor used when checking if a candle is short. A candle is considered short if its body height is lower than the average multiplied by this factor. So there are factors that are being used to create that code. And like I said, that would be in our code that we'd be writing if it wasn't part of the Thinkorswim platform. Now, as we move over here, it is true. And we're going to say within 1 bar. Now, if I click on this and run it, we should get at least 6, right? No, we don't get anything because the original condition, if we just send it through like that, it is an AND condition. And we know that because we can go right over here into our ThinkScript editor and it's created that for us. So it not only has to have engulfing, but it's got to have the Harami along with it. So what we can do is just type in OR. Right there. Okay. And when it flashes OK at the bottom, we're OK to send that through. Now it's one or the other. Okay, it could be both too, right? So let's go ahead and click on this. We had one additional one pop in. Perhaps that, I don't know if we're getting any Haramis. I think the Len that popped up came up earlier for me, and that also is an engulfing pattern. Like I said, it's kind of a difficult time when the markets are dipping as much as they have dipped. But a lot of these longer term moves, like I said, that are sharper will pull up. Let's go ahead and take a look at Len though. Lennar, that is. And yes, that is engulfing. So you can see it's coming in and out of the engulfing right now. We'll have to wait and see how it changes, how it ends the day. But it is fascinating to see if you will get this, and then perhaps we get a longer term, change in that trend. Now, what are some of those signs that we could be looking at there as well? Well, we've talked about this a little bit. This is kind of like just making a new low today. So we don't know if it's going to reverse. We could see that there is some good volume. That's a positive. But what are some other tools that we can use for sort of the next step on these companies? On a daily scale. Look at this. So I use a lot of times when I use this, folks, I use the body of the candle when I'm using trend lines, like right there. And let's get the right trend line in. But what I want to show you here is a way to, I'm just on the diagonal line right here. But what I was going to show you is if we click on the body of the candle, aim that on down. Ooh, we touched right off what was actually highs off the body of the candle here. But yeah, this has been coming down. If we do get a reversal, maybe it could be one of the sharper ones off the bottom because we're only getting 6 or 7 in the entire market. So we can right click on this. It's a right click and create an alert with the drawing. So we're going to say intra bar. It's going to be crosses above right here. And I'm just going to put trend line break. Question mark. I'm going to have Thinkorswim text me this information. So this is more of an advanced alert we're putting on here, but I think it could be really, really relevant to a discussion on some of these bottoms that are going to occur in some of these companies here. We have these major pullbacks, and there you go. So there you have it. Again, so if you wanted to get this set up, again, you just go to set up top, application settings up here, and then notifications. It can either email you or text you. I get those texts in, like I said, within 5 seconds, even if they've been out there for literally a long time, years. Yes, engulfing pattern and Harami. In fact, I'll pull that up right now just to highlight that. But that would be like the next step in terms of a possible breakout higher. Yeah, let's see what happens on a daily chart. Can this price action continue on up? Let me go back to that right there. So these are the two. We'll just open it back up here again. But yeah, so engulfing and Harami. allows it so either of those two can come in. Yes, we are in the ThinkScript editor. We are right over here. So if you missed this earlier, in fact, it's at the beginning of the recording if you want to check that out as well, but you can go and scan and then just go up top and we're just over here, scan stock hacker. We want to go ahead and open up. Oh, I hit something totally different. I got to open this back up. That's fine. What we'll do is, it just killed that filter too when I hit that. All right, we'll go back to study, clear this off. Oh, not that. Study, click on our pencil, and now we can go in here and set this up. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on delete. It's really quick once we've done it already. Select condition. We've added the condition. Select the condition. To build-in study, there's engulfing. Okay. Right there. We need to make sure that we flip this into bullish. Keeping the same inputs. Those can be changed if you want, but I'm just keeping them the same. And there it is within one bar. Click OK and OK. Now, I did want to scan in too and maybe see if we can find an example here. Oh, that's all stocks. Oh, interesting. So that's interesting. It's the sizzle. Let me try the S&P 500 here. Okay, good. We're getting the same list. Okay, but if I wanted to say, let's look at a different group, real easy to do too. Go right down to the NASDAQ. Where are you? One more up. There we go. Right at the very bottom, NASDAQ 100, that is. What are we getting in terms of what we might be seeing in technology group? Let's click on it. No matches right now. So it's a little bit potentially early, and that's true. What we're seeing some big sell-offs, but there a lot of times traders after a big sell-off will look for these engulfing and these harami patterns as a starting point because a shorter term time frame, you're getting that to change. Now, let's see. Yeah, let's do that. Actually, you know what? Let me do this too. I was just thinking about it. There is a longer term. I'm going to see if this is what this looks like. There's a longer term triangle pattern. It's occurring in a company called Humana. Do you see it over on a daily chart, that is? You can probably see that triangle. What I want to do is just see if we're getting an engulfing pattern here on a larger term time frame to kind of check our theory here. And triangle off the bottom, excuse me, off the top, off the bottom. Oh gosh, I massacred those lines, folks, but you get the point. They're getting tighter, right? I should have just done this. They're getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and then a lot of times you'll see that compression release. That's why patterns are so interesting. Let's go over here. Let's click over to our weekly chart. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna actually go a little bit. I don't know if weekly will show it. No, you can see it getting tighter. I'm gonna actually take us to. I'm gonna see if I can spot here for us a quarterly chart. That should do it. Oh, there it is. Yep. Do you see it? It's like there is, first of all, your bar right there. Recognize it? Okay, so that kind of proves out what we were saying a little bit. What we're saying on a shorter term time frame on the daily chart was just a longer term triangle pattern. So are we tapping into price patterns? Absolutely, with the Harami. It's just a shorter term time frame from the one that you're seeing it on. Harami engulfing pattern, you're finding those minute time frames with, quickly with those candlestick charts. So was that helpful? Hopefully that was, I think it's very, very important. I look for those very, very frequently. I also look for price patterns that can unfold within a confluence of price candlestick patterns as well. So you'll see a confluence of candlesticks, and then before you know it, you might have an inverted head and shoulders pattern. But so wanted to just kind of summarize what we talked about today, but when we are getting those sharp moves down, like we're seeing in the market, a lot of times companies that might be the first out of the gates might be getting some of these earlier signs, and that is how we can do it. So again, in the scan tab, so easy to do with that condition wizard. We went through it, and it's just hard to miss, which I just love with that. And anytime you need to come back in here to edit it or see what was going on, just click on the edit button right there. There's the delete over here right next to it as well. But you've got engulfing, you've got the bullish, And then over here to the right, yes, just true within the bar that you're looking at. The other one was the Harami that we saw right in there, just in the same study area, Harami. So being familiar with these can be really helpful. I'm going to flip this into a bullish right there and save it. And there you go. Bullish Harami. You can check over different time frames. There is a category in here called all stocks. There's a lot of stocks, but it can quickly go through those for you. Yep, I see you guys are picking up on other patterns within there. It gets you thinking about what's going on. I think that's what is so important about going in and looking at the details more clearly and say, what's going on? Why would somebody use an engulfing pattern? Why are they happening at the bottoms? Well, could be reversals of a sort, a price pattern. So, all right, folks. Well, that's what I had today. If you found this useful, I think it is important to have this sort of information about these candlesticks. This is kind of a culmination of candlesticks, right? It's not just one, but two. So a confluence, you're getting a couple proving themselves out. But on that note, folks, I just wanted to state that, smash the like button if you liked it. It does help get this content out more frequently. I mentioned to you also, you can check out what we've got in terms of our playlists. The one that I posted out in the chat, you can take a look, and I just discussed a lot of this, about 3 weeks ago in terms of the condition wizard right here. Post that one more time just in the box in case you came in late, but it is under the playlist, which is, I'll back up here. A lot of great content in here, folks. The playlist and our Trader Talks channel. So with that, encourage you to subscribe, folks. Have a terrific rest of the day and a good weekend. We're just about there. Thank you, Barb, as always, for your help in the chat, and look forward to future discussions. Have a terrific weekend, all. Bye-bye.